What? You got quiet on her though. Wow, an attentive audience, how lovely. Hey everyone, and welcome to the All of Belfast Climate Dialogue's capstone presentation. Thank you all for coming. It's really, really nice to see all of you here. I'm thrilled. I'm Brenda Harrington, the program librarian here at the Belfast Free Library and the manager of the All of Belfast Climate Dialogues project, a grant-funded project. I'm joined tonight by my ABCD colleagues, Sarah Kirn and Misty Mallar. And together we will share with you the story of our accomplishments with the ABCD project. So first I'll give you a quick little rundown of our agenda. We're going to start with the beginnings of the project, our goals, what we did and what happened, our 5 takeaways, and what we hope happens next, and then time for discussion and more cake.
Got your priorities.
Yeah, hold on a second. Yeah. Slide. All right. In 2018 and 2019, the library partnered with GMRI to promote a citizen science project on sea level rise. This was when I first met and worked with Sarah Kirn, who's sitting right over there, who was working on the project at that time. It was also the first time the library collaborated with the City of Belfast Climate Crisis Committee. Also, if you remember at this time, few people were talking about climate change. In fact, during the former presidential administration, federal agencies were banned from addressing the climate change. So in late 2019, Sarah approached me with the project idea, inspired by climate scientist Catherine Hayhoe, to create a program to facilitate conversations about climate change that would broaden the conversation and normalize talking about climate-related issues. So here's a slide to remind you all about Catherine Hayhoe, who says it so well: the most important thing you can do to fight climate change is talk about it. So we were inspired by her writings and her outreach, and then also we took influence, and we were encouraged by the reports from the Yale program on climate change communications, that their studies have found that individuals and societies understand climate change through communication with others. So then, with these inspirations in mind, Sarah and I wrote a grant to the Institute of Museum and Library Services for an accelerating, this is a mouthful, accelerating promising practices for small and rural libraries, community memory project grant. APP, IMLS, APP, community memory. So that's what we call it, really. In June of 2020, we found out that we got the grant for the All of Belfast Climate Dialogues project to facilitate conversations among a broad cross-section of the Belfast community about climate change to ensure that all voices and views were heard. We began in the fall of 2020 in the midst of year 1 of the COVID-19 pandemic. We felt and still believe that the ABCD project exemplifies the grant initiative to strengthen libraries' roles as a convener and facilitator of community engagement and dialogue about challenging and timely topics. The rest of our presentation describes how we presented the grant or implemented the grant. Sarah.
Thank you, Brenda. And I know Brenda said it already, but thank you all for being here. It just is really exciting to have so many people interested in this project and supporting it. And this is probably not your first time being part of an audience, but you've been on Zoom and we haven't seen you, and it's just absolutely wonderful to be here with you. Thank you. And do eat cake.
Otherwise it's you.
Next slide, Brenda. So in this project, throughout the 3 years that we've been working on, we've had these 4 goals. And how we've implemented them have changed as the world has changed and as we've learned from programs that we've done and iterated in response and heard your feedback and tried to be responsive. But we've stayed focused on these 4 things, and we're going to use these 4 buckets to go over some of the highlights of the last 3 years. So share some of the activities that we did within each of these areas, just to remind us all that we have accomplished in 3 years, because this wasn't about Brenda and Misty and me, it really was about the whole community. And we're going to share the mic a lot because we're a team now. And one of the things that we're going to talk about a lot is how coming together to tackle a really big, scary topic like climate change is the only thing that makes it not feel overwhelming and horrifying and helps us all kind of move into action and keep hope alive and move away from despair and get together. So we 3 are a great example of that, but we could not have done any of this work without all of you. Yeah, and I think we're ready to go. The next one, did I miss something?
Oh, there you go.
There we are. Okay, so just as we get started, I do want to bring you all back 3 years ago when we got this grant. Remember when? So there was a pandemic that was really fresh and terrifying, and we were scared to go to the grocery store and suspicious of strangers. And here we were, we had this grant to get people talking together about a really tough topic. So of course we pivoted, that's the word of the last few years, and started using this strange new technology of Zoom. None of us really knew what we could do, what were the limits, what felt comfortable, but we experimented and we quickly learned some lessons that changed the direction that we took. You can go to the next one. The other thing that happened in that first 6 months of the project was the whole landscape in which we were operating changed. We had a change in presidential administration, and I was really surprised by how quickly that change actually rippled down and impacted how people were feeling on the ground about climate change. After this kind of freeze on even talking about it, people were like, okay, let's skip talking about it, we want to do something. It was a really different energy. And this state released this groundbreaking plan. Maine Won't Wait was one of the first climate action plans that a state had put out. And it was very ambitious and it was very clear, and it really helped shape a lot of the work that we ended up doing. So very quickly, things started changing. So we had to adapt how we were planning on implementing those goals. So that's a little bit of the beginning. And now Misty's going to tell us a little bit about some of our early engagement efforts.
Thank you, Sarah. So one way ABCD began to engage with community was through surveys, including one of the first ones, this extreme heat survey that the Belfast Climate Crisis Committee started, which reached over 60 people from the Belfast Soup Kitchen, the high school, the senior center, and a local food cupboard. Brenda and I also had a table one day at the farmer's market to just start chatting with people and get the word out about the project. And we also showed up at local events to support other people who were working on climate-related issues, like the new tide gauge that was installed for Belfast and the high watermark sign project that the Climate Crisis Committee really spearheaded, and the high school engineering students implemented, along with so many other organizations in collaboration. Brenda was also featured at this little fireside chat at Waterfall Arts. They did this series of community conversations around a little fire. And it looks chilly, but this was Earth Day, and it was an Earth Day themed, set of stories that were shared. And our outreach also included hanging event flyers around town and engaging on Facebook and Instagram. We also did these monthly newsletters, and these let us reach out to people by email and share ABCD events, but also spotlight some of the positive news and solutions that were happening, things happening in the community and in the state, and opportunities for people to get involved. The email list reached just about 240 subscribers, and the newsletters can all still be found on the website.
we forgot to mention that Misty's joined us right at the end of, no, birthday, April 2021. So right before a lot of that engagement, and she's been incredibly helpful to our projects as she joined. So thank you, Misty. Another way we sought to engage the community about climate change was through art and poetry. In late 2021, we put out a call for art for an exhibit that we called The Art of Reclimation. I'm hoping many of you saw the exhibit when it was up in the gallery. It was up for 2 months in the spring, in April through May of 2022. The exhibit received a lot of visibility and positive feedback. I love this quote from the comment book by a local artist who was in the exhibit, Lesha Sokor. So many images and words all connected by the common thread of climate change's impact. Like, lots to think about. Thank you. The exhibit is also available to view on our library's ABCD collection. It's still me. Oh, there you go.
So also in a creative vein, talking about climate change is serious work. So we last summer wanted to lighten things up a little bit and decided to run a photo contest about celebrating Belfast. The places and activities that bring us joy or inspiration, feelings of gratitude, the things we love about our little spot in the world here, and what we want to protect about that. We had a great response. We received 35 submissions, beautiful photos. We partnered with Waterfall Arts Program Director Amy Tingle to help judge the contest. Not an easy task, she said, and she enjoyed seeing the world through everyone else's lens. The winning photos are here at the top, and you can also see all the photo submissions online on the ABCD collection website, which we'll get into a little bit more later.
Another thing we did, there's a big theme of collaboration, and maybe our biggest, best, most consistent collaborator were all the members of the then Climate Crisis Committee, which now has a new name. If you were part of the Climate Crisis Committee, raise your hand, because we want to acknowledge you. There's a bunch of you. So this project, it might have been Jerry's idea. The idea was that there were so many organizations in the area who were doing something related to climate change, but maybe they didn't even know who else was doing something. So the idea here was to bring all of those organizations together, give them some time to say who they were, what their kind of mission is as an organization, what kind of climate-related activities they were doing, and open the door and possibility for collaboration. So in January of 2022, we met on Zoom. We had 15 organizations with us, and that wasn't even all the organizations that we knew about, but we loved that turnout. And we learned a lot about each other and left with a lot of excitement and interest and awareness about who else was active in climate change. And I'd like to say too that I think part of the reason why they responded and joined was because the invitation in part came from the library. And I think the role of the library in this project is really substantial. I mean, your stature.
Thank you, Sarah. So that was just some examples of how we engaged with the community. Next in our goals that we're going to highlight is educate. When we started the project in the fall of 2020, we did what we could to start the conversation about climate change by adding books on climate change to the library's collection. Here's a picture of the collection, and it's still there. Next, Sarah, you're back.
So the other thing that we did around education was to create some new web content on the library's website, or the ABCD website. We did climate change 101 basics. So anyone who had questions and was wondering what was really going on could go there and take a look. There's actually a ton of climate information out there on the internet, but there's so much that it's almost impossible to navigate. So we really worked hard to pick just a few resources that we thought would be most valuable. We also made a collection of resources to kind of help other people understand the case that we've been convinced of, that, which is what Catherine Hayhoe, our hero, says. You know, talking about climate change is really the most important thing, the most important and the place to start in dealing with it. Also on the website, and Misty will tell us a lot more about it, are the recordings and notes and reports from all of the meetings that we've talked about, all those events, the symposium. It's been newly reorganized again by Misty. And it exists as an ongoing resource for this community to understand the basics and to see what other people have done and hopefully take it and move forward from there.
Back to you. Another COVID pivot was to host programs on Zoom. ABCD was able to use this platform to create an event series co-sponsored with Belfast organizations such as the Belfast Garden Club and the Belfast Bay Watershed Coalition. In designing the programs that first year, we agreed to have the topics in the series be about climate change. And I know there are people in this room that helped with that series and attended the series. So it was very enlightening and wonderful to work with you all. We put a lot of effort into it. So
Yeah. You know, we're really just handing off the mic so you don't get sleepy.
that's right.
So we also held a couple of panel discussions on Zoom, like this panel of local farmers from Daisy Chain Farm, Second Frost Farm, and Bonner Farm. And it was this really wonderful and eye-opening discussion, talking with the farmers about their experiences in dealing with the challenges of more and more extreme weather, from berries to winter greens grown in the high tunnels. And the farmers appreciated the fact that the general public is now talking more about and acting more on the climate crisis. And the farmers talk with a lot of their customers who are home gardeners and share a lot of the same concerns, just on a smaller scale. I liked this quote from Nomi at Second Frost Farm. She said, "The more I hear people acknowledge the struggles, the less alone I feel." Really underscoring the importance of talking about it.
And it's the Climate Crisis Committee again. So another big body of work that we did, and again, in collaboration with the Climate Crisis Committee, was to have community conversations about climate to inform a climate action plan that the committee was drafting. So we had 4 conversations. The first one was kind of a general conversation, but we came up with some operating principles, things that people wanted to see kind of woven throughout that climate action plan. And those were balancing the needs of humans and the environment, equity, solutions that were raised or issues that were identified. The solutions needed to serve everyone, and everyone needed to have equal access to those solutions. And we needed to think about systems. Belfast is upstream and downstream of other communities. The human services that are provided in this community are provided elsewhere. Organizations cross boundaries. Some things happen in the county, some things happen in neighboring county. And how do we think about systems and what we're intersecting with and connecting with in productive ways? We had 4 of those conversations, one very general, one about building resilience with regards to storms and flooding, one about modernizing homes and buildings, and one about the future of transportation. And in each of these meetings, we thought about identifying actions that could be taken in 3 different buckets. Things people could do alone without a lot of resources or special knowledge, but you could take care of it, you could do it yourself. Things that people could do with others, like getting everyone together on the street to do something about the storm drains, working together in an organization to do something together. And then the third bucket was those kind of big ticket items that maybe needed municipal collaboration or a big grant to be one to make it happen. The feedback and the ideas that we heard in those meetings, we archived it, giving this theme in the ABCD collection, which is our archive of wonderful resources from all of these events and all of you. And they also went directly to the group of people who was working on that climate action plan and really informed the draft. We will share some big takeaways from those meetings a little bit later in the presentation.
So as what's the word I'm trying to say, is the final of body of work of the climate action plan, the culmination of that body of work. There was a lot of interest in the community to hear from the committee, the Climate Crisis Committee, about the final draft of the climate action plan that they submitted to the city on June 4th of 2023. On August 8th, we hosted a standing room only presentation of the City of Belfast Climate Action Plan with the Belfast Climate Crisis Committee in this very room. It was really great for us to shine a light on the climate action plan. And as I said, it was the completion of a body of work that ABCD project supported with the climate conversations that Sarah just described. We had a great discussion and we heard a lot from attendees who were interested in becoming further involved in creating a climate action advocacy organization. Another example of how we got out there and had discussions and talked to you all was earlier in the summer on June 1st, ABCD's co-sponsored the Sustainable Communities Day organized by the Belfast Bay Watershed Coalition. It was held in conjunction with the Penn Bay Stewards annual training. This event intended to create connections among organizations with a sustainability related mission and showcase their work in the interested members of our community. So you can see it was really well attended program in the boathouse. Lots of people were tabling, lots of local organizations, and felt really good to be there. I was really glad to be part of it. I gave a presentation about the ABCD project, which was followed by a panel discussion where some good ideas and questions emerged. Among them, the question, what would it take for Belfast to be a sustainable city? How would we go about tying sustainability to economic development? And what are the next steps to forming a coalition of climate action groups? Who or what organization might fill this role? In the next few slides, we'll talk about the fourth goal of the project, which was about documenting, capturing, and archiving the community's current thinking at this particular point in the time about climate change. And we will let Misty start.
So So early on in the project, we were able to create this online collection space where we invited Belfast area residents to share their writings, letters, artwork, poems, photos, really anything that captured their observations, fears or hopes, their priorities about climate change. And in addition to individuals' stories and reflections and other items such as our community survey results, the website captures and archives all of those programs and events that ABCD held, many of them in collaboration with other partners, and the community conversations that took place as a result of those events. All the event recordings are linked from this website archive, and they're available for watching on the library's YouTube channel. Many of the events have, as Sarah mentioned, detailed summaries that we wrote up as well. Here are just a few examples of some of the stories. First, a letter to the editor of the Bangor Daily from the Unitarian Universalist Church of Belfast, marking, and I thought this was really interesting, the third time in the church's 28-year history that the congregation spoke out about and took a stance on a social justice crisis, the desperate threat of climate change. Another story, just observing a steep decline in the number of bees. And the last example here, this one's for me and my partners at Nautilus. If you didn't experience last December's crazy storm firsthand, you can go check out the flooding photos and the flooding videos that my coworkers took. So there were 120 items and stories on the website, and you can browse through the pages of individual items, but we also organized the site into these 8 topical collections. Historical perspectives on climate change in our area, the impacts on residents' health, climate art, our farms and gardens, our forests, oceans and stormwater, including sea level rise and flooding from extreme weather, the community climate conversations, and also local voices individually speaking about climate change. This ABCD website is going to remain as an ongoing resource, not just a dusty archive, even though I keep using that word archive, And as a body of work, it really does capture this picture of what's been happening around climate change in the Belfast area over the last 3 years and people's responses to it. Creating kind of a snapshot from an archival perspective for the future, but also providing a pretty rich and locally focused resource for education about climate change. Brenda?
Yeah, thank you, Misty, for sharing that. I just would like to encourage you all to please go check out the ABCD collection. As you may have seen, there's really a lot of good information there. So this slide is just to remind everybody that our website, our web pages on the library's website have recently been updated. And we have current, more up-to-date resources, and I'm going to keep them up to date and highlighting events and local events going forward. So I just wanted you to know that. So now we're going to talk about project takeaways. We learned, so we have 5 of them. And so we learned so much from doing the programs we've described and all of the ones we didn't have time to mention tonight. As we thought about what we've done and what it means, we've come up with 5 important takeaways or lessons we've learned that we wanted to share. So you probably already read that one. We heard clearly from the community, they didn't want to just talk about it. They wanted to know what they could do. Early in the project, as we presented ABCD as a community memory project, we heard community members didn't want to share memories of past times when it snowed a lot or when the weather was normal, whatever that means, right? They wanted to learn what they could do to take action to correct this current climate crisis situation we find ourselves in. So we changed our focus and approach to offer more educational and resource-based events and solutions and actions for individuals working together and with others. Project takeaway number 2. Many local organizations were already working. We weren't alone. In the course of shifting our focus to offer more educational programs, and as a result of the Waldo County Climate Change Symposium, we learned that many organizations were already working on climate-related issues. By 2022, the national conversation around climate change was prevalent and more normalized, and many local organizations were adding climate action as part of their mission and outreach. Our successful educational series of programs is one example of how ABCD collaborated with local organizations to lift up and amplify these community efforts. Let's see. At this point, we also were really happy and learned the importance of using the really happy to use the ABCD platform to connect the dots between individuals looking to learn about climate actions and the resources and organizations that are available to help. And we will continue to do that. I feel that's important.
Takeaway 3, don't reinvent the wheel. When we dug in, we really realized that there was already so much good work to build upon. Local organizations, other municipalities that were doing things on climate, and the state government. Just a lot of examples and tools, a lot of resources to learn from and use as a model. I'm going to highlight just a few here that really impacted and helped move our work along on the project. The Maine Won't Wait Climate Action Plan, which we spoke about, really helped us decide on the topics and the structure for those community climate conversations that we had with the Climate Crisis Committee. We also took a lot of inspiration on this one on the right here. The town of Mount Desert was a great climate action plan, and there were several other municipalities that have really great examples of climate action plans that are already written. We also discovered this organization called A Climate to Thrive, and they're a nonprofit which formed initially as a grassroots group on Mount Desert Island, looking to get their communities, the island, off of fossil fuels. And they started over potlucks. It sounds kind of familiar for this town, even though I'm not from here. Good grassroots energy there. But they're working statewide now, and their focus is to create this model of climate action, which is community driven and solutions focused, that other communities can then replicate as a model. And I know that Brenda and many of the Climate Crisis Committee members have been regularly attending their local Leads the Way meetings. So those are just a few highlights, and links to all the organizations on these slides. This slide can be found on our website. Sarah.
Thanks, Misty. So in those climate action plan conversations, we really were focused on local action. And what was one of the things that was really striking about those meetings, we talk about individual action, and people had ideas, and then we'd start talking about things people could do together, and you could just feel the energy in the room kind of amp up. It was, Fred's nodding, it was palpable. Anyone else in those meetings, like there was excitement when we started talking about rain gardens and doing a rain garden project together. And occasionally somebody might ask, like, is this really going to change the trajectory we're on for climate change? And the answer is maybe no, but wow, it feels really good to be talking about this and addressing it, thinking about what we can do in our community. And then on the other hand, there are speakers. There was a recent speaker in an event that Brenda hosted who said, yeah, forget about recycling and composting. It's not going to do anything. The only thing that needs to happen is these big changes in emissions. So forget about recycling and composting. And we really conclude, like, no, it's both. You have to do both. And yeah, Belfast is not going to save the planet. As awesome as you all are, and as wonderful as Belfast is, it's not Belfast's job to change the trajectory that we're on. But it is Belfast's job to do what it can do and to raise the quality of life and connectivity of people in this community. So takeaway number 4 is we need both local and federal action. They build up each other. And then another thing that came out of those wonderful community climate conversations, it was early in the series, maybe it was the second meeting, hands shot up right in the very beginning. Who has the power to do anything about any of this was the question. And that really great question started a terrific conversation about democracy. And we started realizing, wow, we all live in a democracy. And I know when I was a freshman in high school, there was a government and economics 1 semester class, and I don't remember all the parts and pieces of a democracy, but you know what? I'm a citizen of democracy, and that comes with rights and responsibilities, and I need to get engaged. So takeaway number 5, we need to remember that we live in a democracy and get involved and understand what that means and recognize that we, the people, have power. This is government by us. So there are a lot of things you can do. That just because you live in a democracy doesn't mean you have to go and run for governor. You can show up at a city council meeting or join a city committee or just get more engaged and start following. And then back to where we began, following good Catherine Hayhoe, make your actions contagious by talking about it. The more we talk about it and act like what we're doing, being engaged, is normal, the more comfortable the people around us feel, and they might get into action as well. So those are our 5 takeaways, but we didn't stop there. We've had an enormous gift. It's been an incredible privilege to have funding from the Institute of Museum and Library Services to spend a few hours every week for 3 years, the 3 of us, thinking about how does the community really start getting its head around climate change and what to do about it in terms of how to respond, what are the impacts going to be, what does it mean for us? And out of that, and we've also run all these programs that we've talked about and all the ones we haven't talked about. I mean, look at the posters on the back wall. We've seen what gets people excited. We've seen what gets people coming back to the table. We've listened, and we think we've learned something that we want to share. This is not telling you what to do, but this is from our experience. These are some of the things that we think are kind of the most important, the juiciest opportunities, if you will. So juicy opportunity, number 1. And a lot of this, the other really exciting thing is that some of this advice or the hopes that we have for the future are already happening. So hope number 1, we hope that municipal leaders adopt the climate action plan and begin and adopt the comprehensive plan draft. And I don't know if all of you have had a chance to read this draft. I haven't in full, but I know from good authority. The volunteers who worked on that draft did something brilliant. They know that climate can't come second. It can't come as an afterthought after we've balanced the budget. It can't come as the thing to think about once everything else is taken care of. Climate resiliency of community, of municipal infrastructure, all the rest has to be part of the conversation up front. And for the first time ever, the Belfast Comprehensive Plan engages with climate change and incorporates it into the decision-making process of the city. And that's a watershed move. That's a sea change. That is huge. And John Beale and others on that committee deserve a ton of credit for working really hard to make that happen. So we'd like to see the municipal government, municipal logistics, that. We hope that all municipal leaders are starting to think about climate resiliency and climate impacts as they're making all decisions. Next. The other thing that's already happening, increasingly, there's money out there, both for individuals who want to make their homes more energy efficient and comfortable in the winter and a lower carbon footprint, and also for communities to invest in things like electric school buses and all kinds of other programs. And these programs are kind of evolving and being rolled out really quickly. You have to kind of stay on top of all of the opportunities, but there really are opportunities for individuals, community groups, cities, and even states to take advantage of. And we hope that the community and you all keep an eye on those things and take advantage of the money and opportunities that are available to you. Next, I think it's you. It's me.
Some of you might recognize yourselves in these pictures. So these pictures are from the Belfast Area Transition Initiative, which was active in Belfast about 10 years ago, a little bit less. And we chose this as an example of people working together in our community and coming together and being for positive change. As you know, efforts come and go and things evolve. So we felt that ABCD actually benefited from the past work of the Belfast Area Transition Initiative because it created a lot of energy and connections and had tangible results. We hope ABCD sets up future efforts in similar way. That's one reason why we've archived so much of our work online. We are aware that there are multiple efforts underway already and new groups are emerging. We would like to see them work together or at least know about each other, find opportunities for collaboration, and maybe form a network. We'd like to point out we can't afford to be in silos. There's so much work that needs to be done. It would be great to work together. And it's also really nice to see new efforts pop up. So, you know, we hope people join others in action. Like I said, there's so many organizations and projects happening here. We hope you're inspired to join a group already in action and do something because we know how good it feels to join others in taking action, and working together alleviates despair. Now up here some more. But I'll just switch the side. These are just examples of organizations working right now in our community. I jumped way ahead. Okay, now we get to share some personal reflections from having done all of this work all together with all of you over the past 3+ years. I get to go first. A lot more people are thinking about climate change now than 3 years ago. I'd say we did a good job normalizing the conversation. Yeah. Kidding aside, no. Thank you. I was talking about like big picture nationally, but kidding aside, we did do a good job locally, and it's true nationally, but I can't take credit for all that. I'm proud of the work the ABCD project did to engage the community on a difficult and multifaceted topic, climate change. I have learned a lot about the realities of climate change and the changes needed on every level to reduce our use of fossil fuel, and thus our carbon pollution. And sometimes I'm discouraged by this. It seems impossible to do. But when I see what others are doing and how many organizations are working on solutions, youth activists are the most inspiring to me. I find encouragement. We have tried to prioritize the solutions in our messaging, the actions you can take to make a difference and overcome despair. The library will continue to be a place to convene conversations and connect people to local climate action. I believe it's going to take all of us working together to make these changes, to support each other, find the right solutions, and learn to advocate for a climate resilient future. So thank you.
I have a two-part reflection. And the first is just thinking, like way back when we were writing this proposal, Brenda and I realized that of course the library is a natural place to host a project, to invite people to come together and engage with a really challenging topic, because that's what libraries do. They bring people together, they have information, they share it. But sometimes that role of a library is overlooked. It becomes more of a place that kids go after school to study and you go to check books out. But libraries really are this kind of radical force for the future, and they exist in so many communities and exist quietly. And I'd also just like to commend Steve and Brenda for going out on a limb and taking on this project, because hosting challenging conversations is not comfortable necessarily. It kind of puts you out there in a new way. And it was a natural thing for the library to do, but it wasn't a natural thing for the library to do. So I just commend you both for taking it on and doing it so well and hosting it and being. People showed up here tonight because of you. And I think that's a significant thing that we shouldn't forget about. So that's part one of my reflection. Part two of my reflection is also a reflection on the ABCD project, because it comes directly from one of those community climate conversations that we had. And it was one about transportation. And we had so many people there passionate about a different way that people could move around, whether it was active transport or it was public transportation, or even great ideas about ride sharing. And I had this realization in the middle of this event with all this energy and excitement, was all these different ideas have something in common. They all take just a little more time than jumping in your car and driving your errand by yourself. And to really get people embracing new ways of living that will help us get on a safer path for the planet, it really is a cultural change that's required. That this press that this country has always had about me first, get there farther, faster, do more with less, beat everybody else to the finish line, get more, is really that legacy culture that we have from our founding, arguably, needs to grow and shift and evolve. And we can't do that alone. We have to come together to make that happen. And that has changed my perspective on everything. And I have this project to thank for giving me that idea.
And I get to go last, probably because mine's the sappiest. So I was not thinking a lot about climate change before this project came along. And I didn't even pay much attention to the news every day before COVID, honestly. But I've learned so much about the climate crisis and really become so much more aware on a daily basis. And I'm not sure exactly what I want to do when this project is done, which it almost is. I'm not sure what to do with my Wednesday mornings. I miss that structure with Sarah and with Brenda. It was very special. It was. And I know that I would like to stay connected with the two of you on that front, even if it's not every week. But also I know I want to keep doing something in the larger scheme of things to help. And we've been talking a lot lately about this rising feeling of fear in people. And the world is either on fire or flooding this summer. I felt that fear and that malaise on kind of a personal level myself. These hot temps that are affecting our health. My husband's trying to put a roof on a shed and 85 degrees and humid. And our gardens and our properties drowning in the rain. And personally, I've always had more of a tendency to put my head down and pay attention to things that are close to home that I felt like I had some control over. But right now, I have to say that I don't feel super in control, and I feel a new urgency and a new awareness that I didn't have before this project. This isn't just about me and my little corner of the world. And I think that we have to do this, we have to do something together in order to survive. It'll get less sappy. So I was looking for photos recently of local climate action, and I came upon the Keeping Belfast Name Beautiful cleanup weekend. And I thought to myself, I was looking at pictures from this year, and I thought, if 800 people can do that much, can accomplish that much in one weekend, what could Belfast accomplish if that kind of energy and that kind of community organization were sustained? And from what I've heard, community organizing is hard work. But could Belfast do something going forward with that kind of group energy? My path going forward personally, I think, is to stay focused on the solutions and to try to remember to feel hopeful and not despairing, not discouraged. And remember that I live in this community for 12 years now, something like that, with a lot of really wonderful people who care. And we're not alone.
All right, folks, thanks for sticking with us. Next, I'd like to acknowledge and thank our project partners that are all listed here, the many organizations and others we've collaborated with on educational programs and conversations about climate action. And as your local library, we're here to continue being the trusted space for community engagement and dialogue. And in conclusion, I think we've said this in many different ways, but working together is the best antidote to despair. And we've endeavored to help connect the dots between the concern, climate hope, and climate actions. And we hope it continues. So thank you all who have participated in our programs and have helped us. And thank you to Sarah and Misty for being with me and us all together for the past 3 years. Thank you to IMLS for the project grant. And thank you to Steve, my library director, for supporting us. Thank you to all of you and for all your involvement. And let's stay together, stay connected, stay involved.
Eat cake.
And eat cake. So thank you so much for coming.
I'm a member of the climate action or the climate crisis committee, as we should call it. And several of us are here. There's a famous woman that wrote a book a while back that says it takes a village. And I would amend that and say it takes a village filled with intelligent women. If you want to get something done. I think these 3 women and fill that village. And the other comment I want to make is it's easy to look to someone else, to solve these problems, to take the initiative, to start the programs, fund them, and, put the accelerator down. The reality is in Belfast, and we're advisory committee to the city council. So we're very intimately familiar with what the pros and cons are, what the limitations of city government are. And I can tell you that it's the people in this room that showed up here tonight that are going to be the ones that are the causes for action, or that the stimulus. And we're in an epoch, a new epoch in human history. And we want to retain resilient communities. We want Belfast to thrive. And I think we have the opportunity to do that, but we have to work together to make it happen. We can't count on, the mayor to call up and say, hey, I got a program. So once again, I thank these ladies. And we have a little present.
Oh, you're so
I think so. Yeah.
Do I have to open it now? No, it looks like a lot of words. Thank you. I'm so happy. Thank you for your comments, Jerry. Does anybody else have something to say? Can you come forward, please?
First, I wonder if we could just give our team another round of applause. My name is Gabe Burford. I'm an organizer here in Belfast. I just wanted to invite everyone to a event that's happening this Saturday at 4 p.m. at the PA, the Possibility Alliance. Raise your hand if you've been coming to the Community Climate Hub at the PA. We got few people here. We basically have a pretty simple format, but we do like discussion groups and then breakout action groups. And yeah, the Possibility Alliance is a fossil fuel free homestead that does community organizing and social justice organizing in Belfast. Yeah, we've had like 3 meetings for our climate hub, but we're looking for more people to get involved, so hope to see you there.
Say the address. Yeah. Say the address.
It's 85 Edgecombe Road here in Belfast. Yeah.
Great, thank you. Anybody else? No? That's fine. Plenty of time for cake. So again, thank you so much. I really appreciate you all coming tonight. Thank you. Thank you.
Very good.